Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michiko Hayashi from Emoto Peace Project in Tokyo, Japan. Today, I'm so happy that I am interviewing Dr. Gerald Pollack from the University of Washington. Hi, Jerry.
Hello, Michiko. It's so nice to be with you again.
Thank you
I'm
so much.
delighted. Japan is second home.
Yes, yes. And I wish I could have you. We could have you here physically in Tokyo or in Japan so that you can talk about this fourth phase of water and your work, your research. But for now, we will share this on YouTube.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
let me introduce you first. Well, Dr. Gerald Pollack maintains an active laboratory at the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington. He is the founding editor-in-chief of Water. That's a multidisciplinary research journal, very, very prestigious, very well-known journal among water researchers. It's called Water. And executive director of the Institute for Venture Science and founder of the annual conference on the physics, chemistry, and biology of water. So, Jerry, today I'd like you to talk about the very well-known, famous fourth phase of water that you and your team discovered.
Well, I'm happy to do that, but I'm going to tell you in advance that my cat, so when the cat's inside, it wants to go out, and when it's out, it wants to come in. So I may need a couple of 30-second breaks for me to allow the cat the pleasure of doing whatever it wants to do.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm okay now, but I can see some imminent scratching on the window, and I think
go ahead. Yes.
Well, let me do it. Let me do it right now.
Sure.
The cat will be happy, and then
Sure, I will be talking about you, introducing you, so people can, they will know more about Dr. Jerry Pollack. Dr. Jerry Pollack is a scientist recognized worldwide as a dynamic speaker and author. That was quick. That was fast. And
well, the door is nearby, and the cat is very eager to come in.
I'm glad you helped him.
Okay.
Okay, his passion lies in plumbing the depth of natural truth, and I love that. This is really,
well,
people don't know.
We try to do that. So, yeah.
I think it's so important that everyone knows about the truth of nature, truth of everything, because nowadays a lot of things are hidden, and it's really hard to share the well, it can be truth, it may not be truth, and many people don't know if what is the truth. So
you're so right. It's so frustrating, you know, especially with the COVID issue. I tell you, I received so many emails from so many people presenting viewpoints that are diametrically opposed to each other. I never know what's true and what's not true. It's so frustrating because you really want it. But we're, you know, we're trying to understand the truth about water, and many of the conclusions that we draw are drawn from very simple experiments that we do, where the result is, well, it's obvious. You know, you see it before your eyes. You just look at something and you can see something moving from point A to point B, and there's no doubt it moves from point A to point B. And then based on that movement, you can then use logic to deduce what might be going on. So we try. There's a kind of transparency to what we do, and logic that hopefully is reasonable logic, but and anybody can inspect it themselves and decide whether the logic is correct or incorrect. And that pretty much defines what we do. And so I'm not sure where to start with fourth phase.
Let me introduce this book at the beginning. At first, this is the fourth phase of water of Dr. Jerry Pollack. And in here, do you sell them? Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, there's a publishing company, which is actually run by my son,
Oh,
who also did the artwork.
it's so
And I
easy
think,
to understand with a lot of
yeah,
images.
easy to understand. Yeah,
Just
and the
so
artwork, I think
beautifully
the artwork
drawn.
is superior to the writing. So if anybody deserves the credit, it's my son.
Yeah.
And the book has become really popular on Amazon. And there's of course, a Japanese translation that was
Son,
edited
here to
by
you.
Dr. Nimoto, and very happy about that. So
All right.
um,
Maybe
yeah,
people want to know what is fourth phase of water.
okay. I will tell you what the fourth phase
I have water here.
what. So there is Michiko's water, and please keep it there because I should have had some water with me, but this is a very important prop. So this water is liquid water, and we all learn in middle school that water has three phases: the liquid that you see right there, the solid, which is ice, and the vapor. And we found a fourth phase, and the fourth phase consists of molecules are organized in a particular way. In other words, in this water that you see on your screen right now, the water molecules, which of course you can't see, they're tiny, but the water molecules are randomly oriented and bouncing around a fantastic number of times per second or per femtosecond even. And in this fourth phase, the molecules are ordered. It's like a crystal, see, and so we called it a fourth phase, but I'm not sure that that's the best definition. Is certainly different from liquid. It's not a solid. It's not a liquid, although we have the capacity to turn this fourth phase into a solid at room temperature. We were not the first to do it. It was an Italian group who did it, but we've confirmed that it's true. So this fourth phase is a kind of semi-liquid form with organized molecules, but it can be converted into a solid at room temperature. Imagine a kind of water that's a solid at room temperature. So that's an exciting finding. But okay, so that's one feature. Another feature of this water is the kind of energy storage, because the water is not neutral. This water, typically it has a negative charge, and this crystalline-like water, and the water beyond it, the ordinary water, has an equal positive charge.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. Yeah, and as Michiko is showing you, you can put electrodes into the negative water, the fourth phase. Sometimes we call it EZ water, exclusion zone, because it excludes particles of solutes. It's negative. One electrode there and one electrode in the positive, and you can light a light bulb. So the existence of the fourth phase is a kind of energy carrier. It's like a battery, and by the way, this is not just a laboratory curiosity. This kind of negatively charged easy water is the kind of water that fills your body.
Yeah, right.
So it has, yeah, and so it has very interesting implication, because if you read a standard biology textbook, they never heard of this fourth phase of water, and the assumption is that the water that's inside your cells is the same water, Michiko, as you showed in that glass. And if that's the case, then the behavior of the cell can be thought of in a way that's very, very different from the way that we would think about the cell if the cell is filled with easy water, fourth phase water. So there's one of the important implications, which if we have time, I can get to, but I just want now to respond properly to your question and answer about what is the fourth phase.
Right.
If you want to say something, but I have one more feature.
Well, this shows how you discovered that the water goes through the Nafion pipe.
Well, yeah, let me get to that one later, Michko,
Okay.
if I may, because the implications of this are, I think, profound, and it has to do with our cardiovascular system. I'll get to that, if otherwise it's in the
Good.
book.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But more has happened since the book, of course. But there's one more feature that I should really mention, and that is the energy that it takes to create this kind of water. So if we want to take the water from your glass and convert it into EZ water, there are a couple of things that we need to do. One thing is to put some material in the glass of water, material that has a so-called hydrophilic surface. Hydrophilic means water loving. So what happens when the water meets that water loving surface, water molecules, they undergo a transition, and that transition then changes the liquid water into fourth phase water, and you get one layer that forms, and from that first layer, a second layer forms from the water, and from that a third layer forms, and these layers keep building out and out. And we found situations where you can get, okay, thank you, where you can see that zone on top that has excluded particles. That's the fourth phase that you see. And to the left, you see some kind of material. I think in this case, it was a gel. And in the second panel, it grows bigger. The exclusion zone, fourth phase, was bigger. And the third one, it grows, I think, if that's the right, it's hard to see it from there, even bigger. So it grows over time. And in order to make it grow, you need energy, because what you're doing is converting something whose composition is random to something that's organized. And it's kind of like cleaning your office. In Japan, I know all offices are tidy and neat, but usually if you don't do anything, they get messy. And if you want to restore the neatness, the order, same as the water, you want to restore the order, you have to put energy into it. You have to clean up, move things around your desk, get rid of those half-filled bottles of sake and ashes from your cigarettes or whatever. I know nobody watching this is smoking, but okay,
you got to do it. Are smoking these days.
Well, yeah, but you need energy to do that. That's the main point. And so we found that for building this kind of fourth phase water, the energy, or at least one source of energy that we've discovered, is infrared light. It's not just light of any wavelength. The wavelengths are beyond red wavelengths, which are 700 or 800 nanometers, into something like 3,000 nanometers or 2,000 nanometers. And if you shine that light into the water, the exclusion zone will build and grow. And that kind of energy is not rare at all. We think of that kind of energy as like a toaster or a range of some sort. It glows bright orange, and you feel the heat, and you can see it glowing, and you're tempted to say, oh yeah, well, that's generating infrared light. And that's true, and it does that. And if you were to shine that light on a chamber like the one you just illustrated, you'd see the exclusion zone growing, and it can grow enormously. We found that very weak infrared light, even extremely weak from a light emitting diode, LED, can grow the exclusion zone 10 times its original size. But it's not just energy coming from the electric or the toaster, it's all over the place. So for example, if we were to turn off all the lights in where you're sitting in Michiko, and someone there, maybe Mrs. Emoto or Hiro Emoto, were to pull out their infrared camera. It's like any other camera, but it has an infrared sensor instead of visible light sensor. Even if all the lights were turned out so you couldn't see anything, you get a beautiful image of you, beautiful to start with, of the plant, of the artwork behind the picture of Masaru Emoto, et cetera, et cetera. Everything would show up because everything is emitting infrared energy. So you got a lot of infrared energy all over the environment. And you, Michiko, are generating the same. You're metabolizing the food you had for breakfast, and that's generating heat and infrared energy. And that heat from inside your body, that infrared energy, is building easy water inside your body. And so it means that the water that you drink, some of the water into infrared, into easy water, fourth phase water, because of the infrared that's coming from inside your body directly. So there are outside sources and inside sources to build this stuff. And that means because the sources are so abundant, it means that the infrared energy is always there, which means that there's always fourth phase water. So whenever you have water and whenever you have hydrophilic surfaces, water loving surfaces, almost always, it's not every surface, but most surfaces, you'll have this kind of water growing starting from that surface outward. And inside the body, it would be, for example, it would be proteins and nucleic acids, the solids that are sitting inside your cells. They're sitting next to water. And all of that water is fourth phase water because you've got lots of infrared energy and you've got just the right surface. So that kind of water will grow. So you asked me one simple question and I gave you a long, involved answer, but I wanted to
that's good.
summarize the main features of this.
So now you can probably share the relationship between health and fourth phase water.
Yeah. Okay, let me do that. And so the relationship is actually very simple, although, you know, once I get to talking, sometimes I talk too much. But
okay. No, we enjoy hearing it.
Well, okay. So yeah, so I mentioned to you that inside the cell is fourth phase water. And that's why, by the way, it's not part of your question, but anybody who sticks an electrode inside a cell measures a negative electrical potential. All cells are negatively charged. And where does that negativity come from? I argue in various places published, and I think in the book too, it comes from the water, because the water bears negative charge. And you know, if you have a container filled with stuff that has negative charge, you stick an electrode in, you'll measure negative charge. So all those water molecules, or the organized structure that was built from water molecules, it's all got negative charge. So an electrode stuck in gives you negative charge. Now the textbook will tell you something completely different. It will tell you that all the negative charge comes from some special membrane properties. And I don't want to go into it now because it's a digression from the issue of water, but I think it's really, really, really important. You know, if you stick the same electrode, instead of sticking it into the cell, if you stick it into a gel, no membranes, no gadgetry in the membrane, but the electrical potential is exactly the same as in the cell. So if you argue that in the cell, the electrical potential comes from the membrane gadgetry, then where does it come from in the gel that has no membrane gadgetry? You see, but a simpler explanation for both of them is that the negative charge comes from the negatively charged easy fourth phase water that sits inside the cell. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is the cells don't just sit there, they do things just like the rest of us. You know, we get up and we do our job. And the cells do their job. They have something to do. They work for a living. So what do? Well, you know, a nerve cell, for example, conducts information. A secretory cell secretes all kinds of stuff, hormones and what have you. A muscle cell contracts. And in order to do that, this that's inside the cell is critical for all of these events in all cells. And the way it works is this. This is what we've learned from a lot of experiments. I'm just summarizing, and a lot of experience that, for example, let's take the muscle cell. When it sits in its relaxed situation, not contracting, just relaxed, you know, like I'm sitting here and doing nothing, sitting on the sofa in my living room. So my cells here are not contracting, my muscle cells. And all the water that's inside the cell is fourth phase water. When my cell is about to contract, the signal for this contraction, and I'm telling you something because I've been in the muscle field for many years before entering the water field. What happens is that the events occur as follows. The muscle gets a signal, maybe from a nerve, and all the water converts from fourth phase water to the water like the water in your glass. And that change in water allows the proteins inside the muscle, or triggers the proteins, if you will, to allow them to undergo their change of conformation. This is called protein folding in people in the trade. And as the proteins fold, that's what makes the muscle contract. And then at the end of the contraction, after you've done what you need to do, lifting barbells or something, at the end of the contraction, right back into fourth phase water.
Wow.
So it's the transition from fourth phase water to ordinary water and then back again, that allows your muscle to do what it does. And we argue, or I argue in the book that's previous to the one that you showed, it's called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, that basically one cannot say all because one never looked at all cells, but basically the important cells inside the body, at least, and perhaps all, function in that way. It's a transition from the organized, structured, easy fourth phase water into ordinary water that allows things to happen, allows the cell to do whatever it's designed to do, and then it goes back again. And the energy that you need is the energy in rebuilding that structured water. Okay, I told you it involves infrared energy, and inside your body, you've got lots of that infrared energy, and outside as well. So that's that. I hesitate to say this is the essence of biology, but I think this is a feature that has been overlooked. Has never appeared in any textbooks yet, although some people writing books have begun incorporating these kinds of thinking. But I think that's the essence of what happens in your body, and not as well in my body, but I'm your seeing.
It's really something, really one of the most important things that all people should learn, I think, at school, because this is directly related to our health, way of living, and why this, like surface tension also, you can explain why the phenomena of surface tension also, it's from the fourth phase of water.
Yeah.
Too. We have so many things we don't really know why that's happening. That the things that we see, like water, as you said, as you show in your experiment, that water makes bridge. There's so many things. And why does water, the ice float when it's solid? Usually they go to sink, but only water, the ice goes afloat, right?
Right. This is one of the unusual features of water that, of course, needs to be explained. Usually, the solid phase of anything compared to the liquid phase is more dense, so it sinks to the bottom. But in the case of water, it doesn't sink to the bottom; it floats. And maybe it's a digression, but let me just say that. I spend a whole chapter in this book discussing the properties of ice, and one is that experimentally is that if you have water, like a glass of water, and you want to freeze that glass of water, you don't go directly from liquid water to ice. You actually go from liquid water to fourth phase water, which has a structure not so different from ice. It's not ice, but it's sort of intermediate, and then to ice. And if you want to melt the ice, you go from ice to fourth phase water and then to ordinary water. And I think that's the reason why some cultures like to drink fresh, that's what you were getting, fresh ice melt, because the fresh ice melt is actually consists mainly of easy water, fourth phase water. And that stuff is good for your health because your cells, getting back to that issue, your cells need to be filled with fourth phase water. And if they're not filled, then that transition that I mentioned to you to go from fourth phase to ordinary liquid water and back again is not easy to accomplish. So your cells are not performing up to par, which means your cells are dysfunctional or even pathological. And we found that some of the pathologies indeed seem to be, as far as we can tell, related to a deficiency in this kind of water. You might call it dehydration, because for the cell, what's hydration? Well, it's water, and we know that inside the cell, the water is fourth phase water, and so basically, fourth phase water is hydration. And if you drink a fourth phase water, as in, for example, fresh ice melt, then you're doing your body a favor because you're supplying it directly, and your body doesn't need to make it out of ordinary water. It's got it to start with. So that's kind of interesting.
That's fascinating. So what I know, because of the time, I would like to ask, what would you recommend people to do so that they can everyone can stay there in a good health, you think?
Yeah, there are a half dozen different things that you could do, and we don't have so much time. So, but let me quickly say, the first is drink a lot of water, because, and everybody knows that, there's nothing new. The second is, if you drink water, from a plant, so-called juicing, and we used to do it. So you go out and you take the leaves of freshly grown plants, and those are really healthy plants, and you squeeze them to death and squeeze out all the water. What's that water? Well, that water is the water from inside the plant cells. And just like the water from inside your cells, it's full of easy water. So when you squeeze out or use a machine to do that and drink that, and making the taste more tolerable by adding a few strawberries or something like that, you're drinking easy water. And this is a very good
smoothie is good, huh?
I'm sorry?
The vegetable juice that we drink in the morning, we make fresh vegetable juice, like smoothie, we call it smoothie.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if it's made, as I suggested, from freshly grown leaves, new, fresh, not old and crotchety like some of us are, because we don't have as much easy in our cells as young people. So yeah, so you gotta, doing it, going out in your backyard and picking those leaves and squeezing is probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
Well, I think so. Just, all I'm telling you is theoretical, based on the things that we've learned. And theoretical doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. We think it is, but more tests need to be carried out. But it's not the only way,
Right.
So mud baths, you guys specialize in mud baths in Japan.
Right.
And why is that good for health? Well, there's been a lot of speculation as to why it should be good for health. I'm sorry, my cat is hitting the computer screen, so it's bouncing around.
Oh, is that why?
Let me say hello to.
Hi, Kenya. Hello. Oh,
here we go. Okay.
Oh, so sweet. Oh, I love that.
Okay.
I never
he'll be on my lap before you know it.
Well, I never saw your cat when I visited you. It's my first time, I think.
Well, the cats seem to depart when visitors come. They're not so sure.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, good to see.
Yeah, he comes and sleeps on my chest when I go
upstairs. Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah. So, but anyway, the third method I was going to say to keep yourself healthy, and I would say mud baths, but others in different cultures would say connecting yourself to the earth. Okay. So an example is walking barefoot on the beach. The
Mhm.
mud baths are another.
Mhm.
There are many ways of doing this. And what's the reason for it? Well, see, this is known, it's reported that connecting yourself electrically to the
Mhm.
earth, as would be the case in mud baths, is very, very important in maintaining health. And I think we figured out why. And the reason is that the earth is not neutral. You know, I studied as an undergraduate electrical engineering,
Mhm.
and no professor ever professed that the earth was negatively charged. I never heard such a thing. You know, we think that you plug in the prongs into the wall, and that third prong, which is called ground, is connected to zero electrical potential. And I was flabbergasted when about 15 years ago, a Russian guy who was working in my laboratory talked about the Earth's electric field.
Mhm.
Andre, I said, you must mean magnetic field? He said, no, 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 electric field. Don't you know about the Earth's electric field? Don't you know the Earth is negatively charged and the ionosphere up there is positively charged? And between those two, like a capacitor, you have an electric field running perpendicular to the surface of the Earth. I said, Andre, you're crazy. And Andre said, no, you're crazy or stupid or something like that, because in Russia, every middle school student knows that the earth is negatively charged. Next day, one of my students comes and brings in the famous, ultra famous Feynman lectures. Richard Feynman, the Nobel laureate,
Mhm.
who is considered to be the Einstein of the second half of the 20th century. Volume 2, chapter 9, a whole chapter on the earth's negative charge and all the evidence,
Wow.
ample evidence. It's just that in this country, at least, we don't know about it. I'm not sure
We
about
don't know
Japan.
about that either.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that has been forgotten.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't be forgotten because it's absolutely critical for everything. But
Right.
your question is specific. You said, well, how does that ever, why does that create good health? Well, we found that if you take water, you stick an electrode in and then pass electrons, negative charge, into the water, EZ grows around that electrode. Um, all you need to do is add negative charge. It kind of makes sense because negative charge, and fourth phase water is negatively charged. So one gets converted to the other. So now you, Michko, if you take a mud bath uh, and the mud is connected to the earth electrically, it's a good conductor.
Mhm.
Or if I immerse my body in the sand near the water
Mhm.
or walk barefoot on the beach, my body is going to suck up that negative charge from the
Right.
earth.
Mhm.
And wherever there's a cell that is deficient in negative charge, that negative charge will fill it and create fourth phase water, which we
Mhm.
need to function properly. So all you need to do, I'm not suggesting it's all you need to do, but those people who connect themselves to the the negative charge of the earth are going to be in better shape than people who don't. So that's three. A fourth is walking in the sun. You know, so what does the sun do? Well, the 50% of the sun's energy, 50% is infrared energy. So
Right.
you walk in the sun, and at least as you know, in the Pacific Northwest, the sun too often. When it comes out, people are really happy. They
Happy.
feel
Right.
pleasant, relaxed. You know that.
Mhm.
And what's the reason for that? Well, the reason everybody thinks that it must be some kind of psychological reason, and that's
Or-
certainly plausible. But since the sun contains so much infrared energy,
Mhm.
50% roughly of the
Wow.
sun's energy is not visible, it's infrared. And you expose yourself to it, and especially
Mhm.
if you don't have so much hair on top, um, it penetrates into your body,
Mhm.
particularly in your head. And so you start by feeling depressed and sullen, and suddenly you get this charge of infrared energy, which builds easy water in your brain. Your brain then begins to function in the way it was designed to function. You see,
So we shouldn't be staying home. I mean, during this lockdown, people are obligated to stay inside our home, but instead we should be getting more sun, being outside.
I'm not a politician. I'm not, I can't advise, but
Right.
maybe sticking your head out the window when the sun shines is useful. And then
From the
in Tokyo,
window.
I know you've got much more sun than we have. So, but you can compensate for that by having a sauna. You know, it's the same thing, because even better, because what you're doing is subjecting your body essentially to heat. And that heat is essentially the same as infrared energy. So you take off your clothing, you sit there, and this infrared energy works its way, penetrates into your entire body, and it builds easy water everywhere. Even if you're modest and decide to stay dressed, even the infrared can penetrate, some wavelengths can penetrate through the clothing into your body, and that builds easy water. And that's the reason why, according to our evidence, why you feel better. And finally, I think I've gone through 4 or 5. I just say that some of the herbs that have been used, particularly ancient Chinese herbs and Ayurvedic ones from 3,500 years ago, we tested them because we know that that they have positive effect, and we wondered whether the positive effect comes from the building of easy water. We tested, we published a couple of papers on the subject, and we found indeed every one of them that we tested builds easy water.
Wow.
And conversely, you take a poison like glyphosate, it does exactly the opposite.
Wow.
It destroys easy water, even at low concentrations.
Really?
And so I'm not sure that that this is a general phenomenon about poisons causing dehydration, if you will, and that could be a mechanism involved. But at least for one poison, it seems to be a real possibility. Anyway, I've gone through quickly through a handful of
Thank you.
what you can do to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Great place.
This is such an important and beneficial information for everyone. So thank you so much. Well, I don't really have much time left. So if you would like to just share everyone about Institute for Venture Science, people can probably, this is, well, can you briefly explain what that is?
Yeah, okay. So the Institute for Venture Science is an organization, and I'm deeply involved in this organization. And the organization is designed to create scientific revolutions, if you will. And I know we don't have much time, but let me just say that without evidence, that it's really hard to find scientific revolutions of the same magnitude, shall we say, as like the genetic code, which is like 65 years ago, I think, or the splitting of the atom, which is 75 years ago. It's really hard to think of a modern one, despite the fact that the amount of money that's going into science now is astronomically larger than it was during those periods. So what's happening? How come all that money invested in science is failing to produce scientific revolutions? And we think it's the system. So if you want to, if you have an idea that runs against the mainstream point of view, and you propose to some scientific organization to get money to study it because it might be important, it's not easy to do it. And a common example is, for example, suppose everybody in the world thinks that the Earth is flat. I could look out my window if it weren't dark and I'd see Lake Washington, it looks flat. So yeah, it makes sense the Earth is flat. But I go in and I try to get money to study flat Earth, and or come forth, let's say years ago, with a proposal that the Earth is actually round, because I've seen satellite photos, and I've even gone around the world and come back to without seeing any sharp edges of a cubic kind of Earth. And do you think I'll get my money? No, I'm not going to get my money, because the people they'll recruit to review my application are the people, the flat Earth people. And what they really want is to preserve the flat Earth theme, because their whole careers are based on being the experts in the flat Earth. And the last thing they want is for Michiko Hayashi to come around an idea that the earth is round and get money for it and build up momentum and such. So you can't get money. So we've tried to establish a situation or an organization that provides money for the most far-reaching proposals. And we've gone to the point of selecting out of more than 200 pre-proposals, 5 full proposals that have the capacity to shake the earth, to turn everything upside down, if they can pursue their work, if they have the money to do so. And that's us. We want to provide the money for them to do so. So potential donors, private donors, because governments, I found out, not to my dismay, are not interested in stuff like this. And so we're looking at people who've done well, who would like to give back to society, and would like to give back to an organization where there's some future and some, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but people with integrity who really want to do something for the world and create that. It's called the Institute for Venture Science. Anybody who's interested, on the web, it's www.iv, like an intravenous, ivscience.org. You can check it out. I haven't told you all details. It's really exciting. Happy to speak to anybody who would like to donate.
Right.
Very
I
exciting.
think that's such an important institute, and that would, it's possibility of changing the whole world, because we have learned so many things, but we're discovering more and more that things that we have learned are really not the truth. So
I think a lot of what we learn, if you pardon me, is not correct. We learn so much in the books, and our students have learned basically to memorize and absorb that information, much of which, I'm sorry to say, I believe is not correct, fundamentally wrong. And so if we're to make progress, not only in science, but also in the technologies that derive from new science, inevitably, technological developments you could never imagine could happen until the new discovery has been made. So we have a lot of problems to solve in our world, and fostering the discovery, new discoveries, brand new discovery in science, very important for solving those problems.
You're making an evolution, real great evolution for the world.
Sorry, you're cutting out. Oh, revolution for the world.
Evolution.
Well, I guess so. I mean, it's not necessarily to create revolution, it's to pursue truth and let the truth lead to those revolutions. And the Institute is different from our own. I should make it clear, because people get confused. Our research deals with water. The Institute for Venture Science deals with all science, water included, but all of science.
It's very broad, yeah.
Very broad, yeah. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And everyone who's watching this, and if you can donate or support this Venture Institute for Venture Science, please do. We really need to discover more and more truth that can help people in the world.
Thank you, Michko. That's
Thank
well put.
you, Jerry.
Okay, well, my pleasure, and it's nice to connect. And
yeah,
so nice to see the Hado office again.
Great. Yeah.
It's like second home.
Yeah. Well, when this Corona thing is over, we would love to have you back here in Tokyo again. Let's do something.
Okay.
Organize something.
Sayonara.
Okay, bye. Let me
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.